Are we good? Are we on? Hello, Facebook friends. Hello, citizens of America and the planet. Hello, revolutionaries. Thank you for joining us tonight for this edition of the Fireside Chat. We have a very special edition tonight. We have a wonderful guest who we'll get to in the second half of the program, and that is Samantha Pre-Stinston, who is a candidate for city council in Minneapolis. And as you know, Minneapolis is the site of great anguish and great action this past week with the acquittal, the finding of, guess what, not guilty, again, in the case of yet another police murder, an assassination, as they're calling it, in Minneapolis, and we'll hear about why that is. So we'll be turning to that later in the program. To get us started tonight, I wanted to talk about and hear your thoughts about some of the developments of the week. So we're going to talk a little bit about the upset or the disaster, the continuing failure of the Democratic centrist agenda in the special election in Georgia, the special election for Congress. The most expensive election for Congress in our history, some $50 million poured into that election, which many people expected John Ossoff to win, something of a poster child for the Democratic Party's centrist agenda, a candidate who could not mention single-payer health care, who could not mention health care as a human right, who could not mention taxing the rich. Surprise, surprise, you know, the American people would not stand up and support this candidate. So in spite of an incredible amount of money that was poured into that campaign, this is yet another loss chalked up for the Democrats. And this ties into the other point that we wanted to talk about in this first part of the program, which is, guess who's responsible for all bad things that are happening right now? That is our presidential campaign is now suddenly being blamed for everything from Russia's interference in the election to actually Trump shooting down a warplane of the Syrian Air Force, which then prompted Russia to say that now our airplanes were going to be in their target hairs. So I'm being blamed for this, like I've been blamed for Donald Trump withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, even though we raised the bar much, much higher than either candidate would. And, you know, contrary to what we're being accused of, our point was never that one candidate was better than the other. Our point was that we deserve a candidate that is actually working for us, not for the big banks and the fossil fuel giants and the war profiteers. That I would feel terrible, and this is a direct quote, for those who want to rake us over the coals for being, you know, Trump supporters, which is totally fake news. That was fake news that was ginned up actually during the campaign, that we were accused of having endorsed Donald Trump. And, you know, we're seeing sort of a rerun of that right now, that we were helping Donald Trump, either in collusion with Russia or just being manipulated by Russia. Somehow we're responsible for Donald Trump. But I want to be really clear that we were on record over and over and over again. And the specific words were, I would feel horrible if Donald Trump gets elected, and I would feel horrible if Hillary Clinton gets elected, and I feel most horrible about a political system that gives us two lethal choices and says, here, pick your weapon of self-destruction. We deserve a political system with choices and voices that are actually working for us. So what happened this week? Neera Tanden, who is the head of the think tank for John Podesta for the Center for American Progress. John Podesta, who is like the lobbyist, the number one lobbyist for oligarchy all around the world, for Saudi Arabia, etc. Neera Tanden, who runs his think tank, launched an assault on us, saying, "Good job, Jill Stein. Trump just shot down a Syrian airplane." So that unleashed quite a little Twitter war, and I encourage people to go to our Twitter page, Dr. Jill Stein at Twitter, and read that exchange and see how basically Neera Tanden and the apologists for the Democratic elite were really raked over the coals by some great truth-telling on the part of our team about what forces are really at play here, and about how the likes of Neera Tanden and the Center for American Progress and Politico, who also chimed in the next day with an effort to smear our campaign with their article, which was entitled something like "Jill Stein says she's not sorry," like we're supposed to apologize for having stood up for health care as a human right. We're supposed to apologize for protesting against militarism, which is devouring over 50% of our budget and making us less safe, not more safe. We're supposed to apologize for demanding that police be accountable to our communities instead of having communities under control of our police. We're supposed to apologize for demanding that higher education be a human right, that we bail out a generation of young people who are locked into predatory student loan debt. This is not what we should be apologizing for. We should be standing proud. So this is the assault that's been launched over the last, I'd say, 48, 72 hours. And we have been manning the battle stations. And take a look at our Twitter page, please, and join in and share the fight. While we're mentioning sharing the fight, please like and share this conversation so that we can share the resistance and build the resistance as strong as it must be. When we're thinking about why is it that the Democrats have suddenly decided to take out the tired old spoiler arguments now, months after the campaign is over, we're like 7 months out from that campaign. Why are they dragging this out now? I think it's because we're running unbelievably strong candidates, like the ones you heard from last week on this program, and like the one you're going to hear from in a few minutes. We are running strong. We are running proud. We are standing up for real community-based solutions against gentrification, against police violence, against endless student debt, against abysmal wages and an economy that's throwing working people under the bus. We are standing up for solutions at the local level and at the national level. And the Democrats are getting really worried. Are they going to blame John Ossoff's loss on me too and on our presidential campaign? Is that something that is our fault as well? They seem to imply that we are responsible for having undercut the power of the Democratic Party. It's important to remember in the last election, these were the two most disliked, untrusted candidates in our history. And people were clamoring for other voices and other choices. And I think it's very worrisome to the Clintonites, to the Democratic Party elites, to see that we are going strong as a grassroots movement, that the Green Party really is leading the charge. So that's been really exciting, and I encourage you to stay tuned. And I'll just mention, it went from Politico to Vanity Fair to Jezebel, and then it jumped to The Hill and MSNBC, although it wasn't nearly as much of a complete vicious lying smear as the original articles, which are intended to make you think that I'm some kind of a Putin tool and that the Green Party is a tool for Russia. Absolutely false. We've addressed that many times on this program, and I would encourage you to go to our webpage. We have a special webpage for all the fake news that has been mounted against us, and it's jill2016.com/hatersgonnahate. And we'll post that on our Facebook page right now so that you can stand up to this smear campaign that's going on. You know, it's a real tribute to the work that we have all been doing, that we are in the target hairs right now. You know, how the saying goes, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you. So it's like, wow, we're in the third stage now, and you know what comes after they fight you? Then you win. So this is a real honor, really, to the party and to all of us that have worked so hard to get us to this point where we are really recognized as the political opposition, which the Democrats and the Republicans, for that matter, are all doing their part to try to smear and to try to get us out of the way. Because at the end of the day, the American people are being thrown under the bus, you know. And although we've been talking about the attack of the Democrats here, you know, the Republicans are no shrinking violets here. And in many ways, the Republicans have even extended the attack of the Democrats. And we have just now heard that the health care law that's being proposed by the Senate is going to be visible. Can you imagine that it's been going on behind closed doors now for weeks, so that the American people are going to have very little time to be able to review this, to vet it, to evaluate what its actual costs are going to be? But it's well known that this is essentially more of the same. This is going to massively cut back on Medicaid. The House version was going to cut $800 billion out of Medicaid, which is essentially, you know, the safety net for the poor. And in exchange, they're going to be giving trillions of dollars in tax breaks to the very wealthy. So, you know, it's really a pox on both of their houses. And they cannot claim that by criticizing one, we're giving a pass to the other. In fact, as we said in one of our tweets, the advantage of being an independent, non-corporate political party is that we can take out 2 bags of trash at the same time. And that's what the American people are ready to do. So we're standing up for it. Again, let me ask you to like this conversation and share it so we can keep building our power. And I'm going to turn for a quick minute or two here to your questions and your thoughts. I'd love to hear especially what kind of grief you are fighting about being an independent, about being green, what kinds of accusations are being thrown your way for standing up for an America and a world that actually works for all of us. And I'm just waiting here to take a quick look. And I have to give a shout out again to Caitlin Johnstone, who wrote a wonderful rebuttal to this takedown that's being done by the corporate media. And I do want to acknowledge there are some exceptions out there that actually allow a decent discussion to go forward. So it doesn't apply to absolutely everybody, but there is certainly a coordinated takedown that's going on right now, because all of a sudden it was all over the place. And there appeared to be a kind of tag teaming going on as well between Neera Tanden and the Center for American Progress and Politico. And if I can let you in on something else that was really, really weird, we were supposed to be interviewed this week by Politico's new project. Anyhow, there were some funny things going on where we suddenly had our interview got canceled, and then suddenly, boom, there was this attack that came in a very coordinated way where Politico and Neera Tanden appeared to be tag teaming. And then it was picked up by a bunch of others. So at any rate, kudos to Caitlin Johnstone for for standing up and being the incredible, powerful truth teller that she is. And I am looking now for, let's see, for your questions. And let's see, if you can just post any questions or comments that you may have. In particular, if you want to share the kinds of grief you're having to answer to. All right, now I am seeing our comments here. So a couple of shout outs. Patricia Augustine shared in New Jersey. Thank you, Patricia. And remember, if you're in, actually, no matter where you are, there's a Green Party convention taking place in July from the 13th to the 16th in Newark, New Jersey. Check it out at gp.org, greenparty.org, and consider coming on out. It'll be really exciting. And then I see Katie Johnstone. Katie, are you actually listening? Wow, I'm so honored if you're out there, an incredible journalist. Katie Johnstone is saying, good job laying the smackdown on Neera Tanden about that. Thank you, Katie. She earned it. Beth Lamb, Dr. Jill, I met you in Cincinnati with my children and so proud of my 2 girls that they watched me vote for you. I'm the veteran that cried in your arms while asking you to end wars. Thank you so much, Beth, for your wonderful inspirational work and for the 2 incredible powered up women, young women that you are bringing up. Jackie Wong Martinson, sorry for loving myself and my family enough to change this world for the better. Patricia Augustine, I'm not sorry either. Green forever. Green hearts. Rod Silver, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. Mahatma Gandhi. Terry Jo Chisholm, I couldn't be prouder of my voting for you back in November. Bub Horn, I'm in Utah and you got my vote. Bub, if you don't know, I'm going to be in Utah tomorrow night and for the weekend for Utah's first inaugural convention for its new state Green Party. So check it out on their Facebook page, and actually we'll try to post it here on this Facebook page as well. So anybody listening from Utah, come on out to the first meeting of the Utah Green Party. It's a sign of how we are rising up strong in the communities all over this country, which is exactly what the elitist Democrats and Republicans, for that matter, are just quaking in their boots about. Travis Ian Branch, I am grateful that as our democracy was on the precipice, Dr. Stein represented my values. I'm proud to stand with her and to be green. Thank you so much. And remember, 45% of Americans could not bring themselves to vote for the 2 mainstream, corporate, sold-out, lobbyist-loving political parties. So we are in good company. Just the number of young people alone who are trapped in predatory student loan debt is enough to win any race. Particularly if you are running in an urban area, if you are running for city council, to put that on your agenda. Of course, well, some cities do control public education, higher education. Some don't, but even if you don't, you can go lobby. And if you are an elected official, if you're a city councilor, and you are taking that with other city councilors to your legislator to forgive student debt, to lower tuition and to eliminate tuition, which is where it should be, because public higher education pays for itself many times over. There's no reason not to do it. And by running on issues like that, we really can stand up, run strong, and we can win. Colin Daybell says, California towing the line with SB 562. And I wonder if someone can remind me, is that the single payer law that was just passed by, I'm not sure whether it was the Senate or the whole legislature. It passed the House, I guess. No, I'm sorry, it passed the Senate. Okay, so keep going, California, leading the charge in so many ways as you are. That's awesome. Let's just keep the heat on for single payer, because it doesn't look like it's going to move when you have centrist Democrats that are, shall we say, controlling the Democratic Party agenda. Hillary Clinton said we would never have single payer. Donald Trump sort of waffled on this. Actually, Hillary Clinton did as well, but it's very clear where Donald Trump is in the camp of the billionaires. So we are filling that political vacuum to stand up for the things that everyday people need. Ralph McLean, keep fighting the good fight, Jill. Canadian Greens are with you. Abdul Jones, still working on opening the debates here. Yes, keep it up. Stephen Ninehouse, here in Humboldt County, California. We are all mostly progressive, so no issues with people who don't like that. Awesome. Yes, Humboldt has led the charge in so many ways, in having a hand-counted paper ballots, in having public scrutiny of your votes, in putting your votes actually online, in repealing corporate constitutional rights and challenging that. Humboldt is just doing amazing stuff. Thank you, Humboldt. Glenn Bennett, I'm looking forward to the Green Party convention next month. Great. If you out there are going to the Green Party convention, let us know. Make a note on your comments so we can just check back and see who's going. Lee Joyner, I wrote you here in North Carolina. Your message is great, and I wish others would just open their minds and listen. And that's exactly why, Lee, they are so freaking out that our voices are strong, remain strong, and are growing stronger with the amazing candidates that we have pushing the envelope forward in our communities. Beth Lamb, Dr. Jill, New Jersey Senator Ray Lesniak is a wonderful animal advocate, and he's fighting the pipeline there. Look him up when you're there. Awesome. Thank you so much, Senator Ray Lesniak. Keep up the good work. Okay, and then a couple of the attack testimonies, and then we will bring on our very special guest. Dutsa Good says, I'm under attack by the office manager for supporting you, Jill. I'm so sorry to hear that, Dutsa. And that's one really important reason why our votes and our politics are confidential. And it's a shame when we are, politically driven underground and cannot speak freely about our politics in the workplace. It's another reason why we just have to redouble our efforts and change the prevailing political paradigm. Montague Magruder, I'm constantly fighting the gaslighting from Democrats, including electeds, who hate those who don't support a corporatist candidate for governor. So true, Montague. Dominique Panda Smith, being black and supporting the Green Party isn't easy. I'm sorry to hear that. And, the Green Party shares many of the struggles of America, not surprisingly. And we are working to bring in the candidates and the people who can help us take that on and come to terms with the racism and the white supremacy that is alive and well across America, including right here in our own party, where we have the liberty to talk about it, at least. So it is very much a concern for the party to be able to come to terms with that. And you'll hear from one of our luminary candidates shortly about how she is fighting that struggle in the party and beyond the party. Dominique Panda Smith, I'm sorry, that was just Dominique's comment. Lance Smith, I unfriended 300 people during the general election last year due to the bullying and harassing I was enduring because I was green. I think that sounds familiar to a lot of people out there. Joe Evans, yes, I've seen it in a Democrats group. Couldn't believe the things being said. Brandon Long, I still get grief that the Greens only run every 4 years. Could you highlight a few of the awesome local candidates you know are running right now? Gladly. So one of them, Samantha Lee Pre-Stimson, is one of those incredible candidates we're about to hear from. I could name Howie Hawkins in New York, who has been running repeatedly in order to build his campaign and build his profile, because that's what we do as Greens. Often the corporate media will ignore us and we are locked out of debates. So it may take many campaigns to actually get the word out to your community. There are Darlene, in my own home state of Massachusetts, Darlene, and I want to say Darlene. I am blocking on Darlene's last name. Forgive me, Darlene. I will come up with it. But a wonderful candidate who is running for city council in Western Massachusetts, in Springfield. So these are just a few of many incredible candidates, too many to name, but Brandon's point is can't be emphasized enough. We've had over 1,000 people elected to local office as Greens, and we have run over 3,000 people for local office. So this idea that Greens only show up to run for president once every 4 years is another one of these lies and myths that is used in order to try to hold the Greens back. Clemencia Vichfala, I stood up for you and the Green Party on Politico. Thank you, Clemencia. I told them that they should be ashamed for aiding and abetting the DNC in rigging the primaries and for giving Trump 24/7 coverage so that he won. Thanks for your brave efforts for us. Please don't stop. Thank you, and thanks to all of us for those brave efforts. And I want to underscore what you said. What was it that got leaked in those DNC emails? That they put forward what they called the Pied Piper candidates. That's what Donald Trump was, a Pied Piper candidate that they were putting forward because they knew he couldn't win. They wanted to push these ridiculous lunatic fringe candidates in order to sabotage the party. And then you had some of the very big media saying Donald Trump may not be good for America, but he sure is good for my bottom line. So, you know, we very much have conventional politics. The Democrats who are bitching and moaning right now against independent political voices were very much the masters of their own fate here that launched this horrific plan to lift up Donald Trump. So let's just get clear about that right now, and let's have an honest politics. And while we're at it, let's get the big corporate money out so that we can get the people back in, and we can get an America that actually works for all of us, for working people, for women, for immigrants, for people of color, for elders, for seniors, for students. Let's get it for our brothers as well as our sisters. Let's get an America and a world that's working for all of us. We got the money. Let's just stop wasting it on this just mindless militarism and imperialism that is not making us safer. It's endangering all of us horribly. And right now we are at that brink of nuclear war right now. Or shall we say we are at the brink of war with Russia, and war with Russia could go nuclear at any moment. So this is an unbelievably, what shall we say, sobering moment right now that underscores our green message throughout the campaign and our continuing green message in all of the campaigns that we are running right now. We need to pull back from the brink. We need a peace offensive in the Middle East. And by the way, that was my message to Russia, loud and clear, that I was at a conference in Russia delivering exactly that message, that Russia was following in the catastrophic footsteps of U.S. policy by having undertaken this bombing campaign in Syria. And my pitch to Russia, as well as to the U.S. government, is that we both need to do a 180. We both need to get with the program, implement an immediate ceasefire, and to create a weapons embargo that's going to take both of us, our allies and Russia's allies. As John F. Kennedy famously said, we must not negotiate out of fear, but we must not fear to negotiate. We have to talk to our adversaries as well as our allies. And, you know, if that means going to Russia to do it, we go to Russia to do it. And I sat at that table hoping I would get a chance to speak to Vladimir Putin, but unfortunately that was not in the cards. He was there only very briefly. There was no translator. Nobody even met anybody, got introduced, names exchanged, nada. So let's not get freaked out at the propaganda efforts by the Democratic Party to try to smear campaign and fear campaign around that photograph that basically represented a peace-making effort and diplomacy and the kinds of things that we should be doing, not just as candidates, but that our government should be undertaking. They should be leading the charge for a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy. So with that, I rest my case, and I thank you so much for tuning in to this first part of the program. And I encourage you again, like this and share this, because you're going to really like what's coming up next. You're going to see some of that incredible firepower that the Democratic and Republican elites are quaking in their boots about, because we got some unbelievably powerful, honest, grassroots energy coming up, and this is in the form of my wonderful colleague and partner here in the Green Party, Samantha Pre-Stimson, who is running for City Council in Minneapolis. So let me introduce Samantha. Drum roll, and it's great having you on the program, Samantha. Thank you so much for making the time, because I know you are really busy, and there's a lot of action right now in Minneapolis with the incredible double tragedy, not only the assassination, as you put it, of Philandro Castile a year ago, but now the exoneration of his assassin. Tell us what's going on in Minneapolis around that.
So there's a lot going on here, and what people need to know is that here in Minnesota, this is the first time that we ever tried an officer for murdering someone. So for us to botch it the first time we do it, it was a setup from the very beginning. The jury selection, right from the judge. We had a black judge. They got rid of the black judge before the case was ever tried because they didn't think it would be fair. Only 2 of the jurors were black, one of which was an Ethiopian immigrant who'd been in this country for just maybe 5 or 6 years, who was 18. The other one was another very young black gentleman, not from the cities, who had never had any contact with police in any kind of way. You had someone on the jury who has contracts with the police to provide them with their weapons. You had another juror who worked with the wife of Officer Yanez. They were friends, then they tried to retract it and say they weren't, but we know it to be fact that they were. So it was a setup from the beginning, and for the prosecutor to then come out and tell us that we have to accept the verdict, Minneapolitans and Minnesotans are not accepting the verdict. We do not have to accept that verdict. So we have been called to action, and we have been organizing. Valerie Castile, that was her first and only son. He was never able to give her any grandchildren. Diamond and her daughter they could have been killed. That child is now traumatized. Who knows if she's going to be able to recover and what effect that's going to have on her life. And Philandro was the stronghold of their family. And now this family is torn apart. And Officer Yanez is, again, it's being reported wrong. He was not fired. He was allowed to resign. He is now negotiating what his severance package is going to be at the taxpayer's expense, of course. And while the investigation was going on prior to the trial, he was trained for a new job at a different precinct and basically was given a new career in law enforcement. And now that he's been found not guilty, he's free to do as he wishes. And it is a travesty. This was an assassination, and this is a human rights issue that we are facing here, not just in Minnesota, but in our nation.
Exactly. And this just repeats what happens over and over and over again. And there's just blatant video of these cold-blooded murders. This is what happens all every time. And can you guide, Samantha, how this is playing into your campaign? Because at the end of the day, our campaigns, are about a political voice to these movements that enable us to take power and to actually this system. How is this how is this feeding into your campaign? What are the dynamics out there in the street that relate to what's going on here?
Right. So what I want people to know is that this is very much so political, and I feel that it is my civic duty as a candidate running to use the platform that I have to bring light to these issues, because I have the credibility, I have the platform, I have the support, and might I mention, I have support from all parties. There are moderate Republicans, conservative Republicans that work on my campaign team. There are Democrats, there are Greens, there are independents, there's anarchists, there's everybody involved with this campaign, because they finally have a candidate who is about people, who is not beholden to anyone, who, in the words of Shirley Chisholm, is unbought. We're not about anything but people. And so there are people that are hurting. Valerie Castile is hurting. His sister is hurting. So I felt that it was my civic duty to take the call. So what we did was we organized from the very beginning. We have a mayoral candidate, Nakima Levy-Pounds, who left the Democratic Party. She led the charge along with Black Lives Matter St. Paul. There are people from Black Lives Matters Minneapolis. There's a new group called the New North, which is working to get rid of what we are calling here in Minnesota the Jim Crow North. And so several reverends as well, we all came together. We came to the Capitol to demand justice. And we marched on Friday night for what was planned to be 5 miles, which ended up being much, much more than that, which ended with a standoff on Highway 94. It all ended up peaceful. There were a few people that chose to get arrested. It's another thing that was misreported. The organizers of that event made it very clear that the point was not to get arrested, but if you felt that that's what you wanted to do, they basically broke it down so that people could make the choice and exit the highway if they so chose. But we had well over 2,000 people marching those streets. And they were politicians. Some of them were police officers. They were children, families, all colors, all religions, all identities. And they were out there in solidarity because they are sick and tired. And we're tired of being sick and tired. And we want people to know that we're not helpless. So we took it to the streets again on Saturday. And we led a march downtown Minneapolis. And we did it again. And we had a very beautiful, peaceful rally again. Sunday, we took to the streets again. We went to the St. Anthony Police Department that employed Officer Yanez. And the citizens of, it's a very small, you might even call it a town, but it sits right outside of Minneapolis. It is predominantly white. And those people showed up. White people showed up and they heard our call, which was white silence is violence. You cannot afford to stay quiet any longer. And so they heard that call. They came. And we marched yet again, and we had another rally. And so that was the first phase of what we were doing. And now we are planning for an economic movement that starts here in Minnesota, because a lot of the large corporations that bring in the billions and billions of dollars actually have their headquarters right here in Minneapolis. So we're going to lead that charge. We're putting an economic plan together because that is the language that that corporations speak. That is the language that racists speak, nationalists speak. That's the only language they speak. They speak in money. So we're going to hit them in the pocket so that we can get their attention, so that they will meet our demands, and so that these human rights issues are discussed and met, and that we actually form legislation, because that's what it's going to take. Not just at the local level either. I don't want people just driving around safe in Minneapolis. I want them to be able to drive in any corner of this state and feel safe and not be pulled over because they have a big nose.
Awesome. Tell me, Samantha, I'm curious about two things. One is, how does your campaign relate to this movement? Are you there as a candidate? Are people looking to your campaign and help empower them? I know sometimes it's, you want to be careful because you don't want the movement to feel like you are manipulating or being predatory or taking advantage. But on the other hand, you have a service to guide them. And I'm curious about that. And then I'm also curious to hear more about this economic plan. But first, just tell me about this relationship between the movement and the campaign.
Yeah. So the outpouring had, and you're right, there is a balance. So when I showed up on Friday, I showed up as a citizen who is concerned about these inequities that have not been discussed. They have been dismissed. People have been tokenized. Our largest portion of Black voters lives in North Minneapolis, which is 70% Black out of a little over 14,000 residents that live there. And out of those 14,000 residents, less than 2,000 voted in the last election. They have less than 2,000 out of 14,000, 70% of which are Black. The reason that is because for years, these inequities have not been addressed. Therefore, Black voters and people of color, they feel that their vote doesn't matter. And that is strategic on the part of the two-party system, because guess what? If those 14,000 people showed up and realized that their truth to power in their vote did matter, and they voted, these clowns wouldn't be in office, and they know it. So when we, as candidates, myself, also Dr. Reverend Nikema Levy Pounds, who left the Democratic Party, and she is she's just running on people. Also Raisha Williams, who is running for city council in that particular area I was talking about. When we show up, people are glad that we are running for office, because they know that we're the only ones who are going to speak that truth to power, and that we're going to bring everybody along. This is a movement. And so people are glad that we're there. We're not there campaigning. We're not there talking about ourselves, but we do bring up the fact that this is very much so political, because another thing that is happening at the same time that all of this is going around and these issues are polarized is Minneapolis is actually running a very historic election in which 75% of the seats are being sought by people of color. And that is unprecedented and unheard of. We have a real chance here to have this city be led by people who have a diverse background, not just diversity in what we look like, but have really strong, diverse backgrounds that have a global perspective and that understand people, all kinds of people. And that's what we're here to represent. Even me, as being a Green Party member, I used to be involved in our local politics here as a Democrat, which here we call the DFL. And I served as our Senate District Vice Chair, and I got tired of being tokenized. And when I decided to run for office, I needed to be able to speak my truth, the whole truth, and to keep, to make sure that I can run on a message that really was about people and not about furthering any political agendas or about running with any group or anything like that, just solely on an issues-based campaign based on what I know that people need. And so my support and the presence of other like-minded individuals like me has been very well received, and people are coming to me for leadership because I am not waiting until I get to City Hall to lead. I'm leading now, and I'm going to continue to lead whether I win in November or not.
Yes, that's so awesome. When did you decide to make this change? When did you get tired of being a Democratic Party leader and decide you were going to run for office, not as a Democrat? When did that happen?
So last year, really after the election, I was done with it. And I was tired of people blaming each other and pointing the fingers and these messages of we need more Democrats. We've had more Democrats. They've had the power. They've held the House. They've held the Senate. They've held the presidency seat. And we haven't seen change. So what difference does it make when the Democrats have complete control? It doesn't. What we need is diversity in voices. What we need is a new political system. We need a new judicial system, because it does not fit the America that we are today. And people should not be afraid to speak up and be able to support the candidate that makes sense, regardless of what party they belong to. If the Green Party candidate makes sense, then let's roll with the Green candidate. So when I decided to run, I knew right away that I wasn't going to run with the Democrats. And that decision was reinforced when the local party chair, Don McConnell, decided that he did not want to address these inequities. He wanted to know who was telling me what and what these inequities were when he already knew what they were. He knew that they were existing. Same thing with the state party chair, Ken Martin. They know that these things were existing, but specifically Dan McConnell, who's the local party chair here, he didn't want to hear it. So he didn't even want to have a phone call. He kept responding by email and refused to have a phone call. So I called Brandon Long, who's our state party chair. And I spoke to Cam Gordon, who is the only Green who holds a city council chair here in Minneapolis. And I loved the discussion. I loved that truth to power. I liked that they weren't trying to control my message or whitewash my message in any way. And they realized the power of my voice and they wanted to support it. So it was very clear at that point, not only what party I needed to seek the endorsing of, but what party I needed to turn my effort and my energy into if I really wanted to make a difference that was going to benefit people.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. That is so cool to hear. I just want to remind people to please like this conversation and share it so we can make sure everybody knows about Samantha. And I want to just give a shout out or have you shout out, Samantha. Where's your website? How can people help? Because people all over the country, this is the kind of campaign people should be helping, not the John Ossoffs $50 million, race where he raised an awful lot of that. The centrist Democratic Party agenda that's really basically same old, same old. This is what, democracy looks like. This is what diversity looks like. This is what racial justice and community education and a community-based economy looks like. And we need this all over the country. And if people can help you move forward in Minneapolis, it just sets a really powerful precedent that we can then emulate in other places around the country. So you're really everybody's candidate. You're not just the Minneapolis candidate. You're everyone's candidate. Everybody's struggling with the Philando Castile assassinations in their community. So tell us how, where can people go and what can they help you do?
Absolutely. Before I talk about myself, I do just want to say that there is actually a fund for Philando Castile's family, for his mother and for his sister. I don't have the exact address at the moment. I can type it in afterwards. Right. But there is a fund for them, and I want that to be at the forefront. However, of course, I do want your support. And yes, I feel that I am the people's candidate. This is the voice. And more people need to step up like me and realize that there are people out there that want to support you. They just haven't heard this kind of a message before. And they haven't heard anyone that's willing to tell the truth. And they hear somebody that's coming out and speaking real truth to power, that is about people, they get excited and they support across party lines. So what I want you to do is to go to prefor3.com. That is PREEFOR and the number 3.com. You can read my platform, you can read my bio, see some pictures, and definitely you can donate. The rules here is, of course, any donation is welcomed. If you have $1, give $1. But the maximum donation that you can give here in Minnesota in a campaign year is $600. So if you have that, you can give that. But up to that amount, whatever you have would be greatly appreciated, because we are definitely fighting the Democratic machine here. This is a one-party town in Minneapolis. Not even the Republicans have a stronghold here. So it is time that Cam Gordon has some company in City Hall so that we can actually move an actual, I don't call it a progressive agenda. It is a conscious agenda, because anybody can make progress. You have to be conscious to be awake to the inequities and the issues that led to those inequities in the first place. So we need some more conscious candidates to get into the City Hall to be able to lead and to truly lead by example. So please go to prefor3.com, and you can also follow me on social media, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram at prefor3.
Awesome. I'm going to read a couple of shout outs and then we'll turn to a few questions. Sarah Woodcock says, Samantha Lee, Stinson for Minneapolis City Council Wards Free, big hearts. Julie Hickey, woo Samantha. Teresa Dean, hi Samantha. Lori Lambie, NRA is all about lawful gun owners, unless they're black. Lance Smith, thank you Samantha for focusing on these racist police assassinations. You're the voice the people need. Dominique Panda Smith, thank you, Samantha, for standing up. Montague Magruder, yes, you got a dream team working with you. Christy Sumner Rue, the what North? Say it again, because the audio didn't work. It was choppy then.
So PREEFOR and the number 3, prefor3.com. And you can find me on all social media at that same prefor3 handle.
Great.
And we'll type comments as well.
Awesome. Andrea Torchiri says, go Samantha. Rose Ann Martinana, thank you Samantha. Brandon Colley, I'm personally concerned with Black Lives Matter. I love the idea of it, but I question the funding from billionaires like George Soros. Okay, so do you want to address that, Samantha?
Let's for a minute, because what I want people to realize is that we need people like you that are concerned to get involved and to help fund these groups. There are people that are just waking up to the message. And so I I want people not to attack those groups. And yes, definitely as a Green, you know, we don't want to accept corporate money. But what people need to realize is a lot of these groups are just starting out. Some of them are just learning to organize. Some of them have teenagers that are organizing. So they need leaders such as myself, those that are commenting, to be able to guide them and act as mentors instead of attacking them. And also in the message, like you said, of Black Lives Matters, to clarify, it is not that other lives don't. It is the fact that Black lives are treated as if they don't. So that is another message that is important to spread. I definitely hear your concerns. I will pass those on to our local chapters here, but that's the message that I want to give back to you as far as how I feel that we can help these groups to further their agenda without having to be beholden to the corporate money. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Seshadri Srinivas says, Samantha Stinson is sure to win. She cares for the people. Montague Magruder, yes, change the representation and make it colorful. Yes, we're it. Christy Sumner Rue, love her. Sarah K. Woodcock, my grief has been related to the murder of Philandro, related to the verdict in the murder of Philandro. Yes, I think so many people have been devastated by that. Sarah Woodcock, if you have friends in Minneapolis, please tell them about Samantha Lee Stinson, Ward 3, and Dr. Nakima Levy-Pounds, who's running for mayor. Great.
Has stood in solidarity with the Greens, might I add, because the Democrats tried to attack our party chair, Brandon Long, for trying to push the Green Party agenda by showing up at the rally with the banner. But what people didn't realize was that the Green Party was asked specifically by me to bring that banner. We were asked to be there. Our presence was welcome there. And all of the leaders and organizers that were there wanted us to be there. And our banner was actually being used as a shield to keep reporters out who were there in the faces of those that were grieving and crying, trying to get their cameras in their face. And these are not, excuse me here while I'm plugging in my phone. These are not reporters who have been marching the streets with us from the beginning, even with the Jamar Clark and the 4th Precinct occupation that happened. These are reporters that were here to just get the headline. And so the Green Party actually stood there as a barrier in solidarity, and they were welcome there. And Dr. Nakima Levy-Pounds stood up and let people know that we were welcome there and we were wanted there. And she told Brandon to make sure that he continues to speak his truth to power and to make sure that I let him know that. So she stands in solidarity with the Greens, and a lot of Greens support her right back. So absolutely. If you're looking for candidates that are independent from the system to support, I absolutely would say to support her in her efforts to become, she would be the 2nd Black mayor of Minneapolis. I would be the 1st Black person, and I'm actually biracial, so I'm half Latina, half Black. I'd be the 1st Latina, I'd be the 1st Black person, I would be the 1st veteran, I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, to ever hold this seat for Ward 3 in Minneapolis City Council. So it is historically important, and I feel it is historically relevant, and the only way that we're going to be able to move forward, because you have got to have skin in the game, you have to have first-hand experience with these issues if you're going to be able to have that perspective and bring it to the table to actually have sustainable solutions.
Awesome. One of the questions here, and my computer is frozen, so I can't quite get to the person, but I do recall the question, which was, do you have thoughts about dirty tricks at the polls? And they name Sherry Honkala, who has a lawsuit that's still pending because of the just flagrant cheating and vote rigging and pressure tactics that were going on in the polls. And of course, Philadelphia is kind of, it's like the poster child of political corruption. And I don't know how Minneapolis compares to that. So maybe it's not, maybe it's just a totally different universe. But what are your thoughts about that and ensuring that the vote is a real vote?
Right. So, one thing you can do again is you have to support real candidates, because if you don't be fooled by the fake progressive candidates who like to throw around words like progressive, you shouldn't have to put progressive on a t-shirt if you're really progressive. Your platform will speak for itself. Candidates that throw out words like equity, and great cities and things rising and a lot of different terms that come across, and they're that you need to dig deeper and really look into these candidates, check their track record, see where their money is coming from. It requires us to do a little more work than we've done in the past, where we just look for who has the brightest smile and the strongest handshake. So you do need to do your homework as far as who you're electing. There's not anything we can do at the moment for who's in there, but now that we're moving into another season, we need to get organized and make sure that you are educating your fellow neighbors and your friends and your family and anyone else that you can talk to make sure that the next set of people that we put in office are real, true, conscious candidates who are going to make sure that they do something about these balloting systems and change the voting system. Luckily, here in Minneapolis, we have ranked choice voting, so it absolutely does help. We don't use stamps, so it helps. You can just write people in and just write them in. So we don't have those types of issues, but that's what it's going to take. You have to have real people in office that are actually willing to make the changes because they're not part of the system. They don't have anybody telling them what to do and feeding them the way that they've always done it. The status quo is over and our time is now.
Beautiful. Really well said. I'm going to throw one or two more out here at you. And then we'll let our kind viewers go on to their other responsibilities this evening. But first, a couple more questions. Steve Goodrich says, has any police officer gone to jail for killing unarmed people?
Not to my knowledge. There might have been one or two. In 2015 alone, there was 100 Black men that were victims of police brutality. And of those 100 in 2015, only 2 actually had charges brought. And with those, I don't even remember what the convictions were. I'd have to look it up. But if anything, it's the lesser charge, manslaughter or, something like that. But the charge alone isn't even the thing. It's the time that's associated. So just because somebody might end up charged with something doesn't mean that they're going to get any time. They could get time served. They could get community service. So there's a lot of ways that the system can buck back. So the reality is no, we are not. And something to point out that a lot of people don't know is that this is a Supreme Court issue. Because if you read the law and what it says, it reads very nice that that like we have some rights, but then there's a comma and a but. If the police officer feels threatened, that they or specifically that they feel that their life is in danger, that they are fearful, they have a right to kill you. And the problem is that fear is subjective. So body cams even are a waste of time. You can see it real time for your own eyes, even like we did with Philando with that dash cam footage that's available, which I encourage everyone to watch on YouTube. You can see whatever you want through that camera, but somebody, whether they feel fear or not, is very subjective. So the law has made it actually pretty much impossible in a lot of ways to hold these people accountable.
Right. Absolutely. Dawn Neptune Adams says, ooh, I like that. Conscious candidates. And I have to give a big shout out to Dawn Neptune Adams, who is a incredibly inspired and powerful Indigenous sister, Green, in the state of Maine, I believe with the Wabanaki tribe, otherwise known as Penobscot, and one of the leaders of the Green Party in Maine, the Independent Green Party, and also one of our leaders at Standing Rock, who stood with the fight of the Indigenous people, and just giving a shout out to what we the people can do together. The fact that finally, after all these months of hard work and suffering on the part of the Standing Rock Sioux and the tribes and everybody who stood with them, we got a legal decision. A decision that has that may actually just turn the tide here. So again, a big shout out and thank you to everyone who's been a part of that amazing work.
I'd like to say 4 quick things because I know we're going to log off, and so I want to leave people here with 4 quick things. One, I want everybody to know that no matter what color you are, even though it's scary and these are scary times and things are polarized, there are people that are like me that are ready to lead, and your voice is valuable regardless of what party you belong to. Your voice is valuable. I hear you. I want you to continue to speak your truth to power, seek out others that are like you, and do not be afraid, because our silence, whether it's white or any other color, is violence. The longer that we stay quiet, the more that these inequities continue. So make sure that you draw on the collective strength. I told some ladies reached out to me today that said that message resonated with them, and I meant it when I said, if you forget it, you call me and I will remind you that your voice is valuable and I need to hear it, and our nation needs to continue to hear it. The second thing that I want to share with everybody is to stay tuned. I will be providing more information at a later date about what we're doing with this economic stronghold that we're getting ready to lead, and there'll be more information about that in a week, and so I will follow up regarding that. It is the next phase of where we're taking the movement as far as the rallies and the protests, which we'll continue doing those, but we're adding another layer in. So that's happening. That'll be for the month of July, so get ready. We're going to hit them in the pocket. The third thing that I want people to know is, again, reminding them that this is a historic election here in Minneapolis, and we definitely need your support from across the nation to make sure that we can get people in the seat. These are people that are not politicians. These are regular, everyday people like me and you who stepped away from their jobs like I did. I quit my job in January, walked away from it, and I'm spending 100% of my time focused, because it doesn't take $50 million to win an election. It takes a strong platform and a strong leader, because you could have $100 million, and if you're not saying anything, your mouth is just moving, but nothing's coming out, you're not going to win. It just takes shoe leather. So anybody can stand up and run a campaign. And if you're not sure how to do it, I absolutely want you to contact me so that I can help you. The other thing is, again, remember to go to prefor3.com, PREEFOR3.com, to support Read the Platform and certainly to donate. And remember to keep the Castile family, the Jamar Clark family, the young woman that was just beaten, raped, and thrown into the river. I can't think of her name at the moment. Her family, the Islamic young girl. The woman that was just killed out in Seattle, who called the police, and now they're calling her a suspect. She had a mental health issue. They came and they shot that woman, mother of 4, pregnant with her 5th, shot her in front of her children. Keep these families in the forefront of your mind when you start to feel like you're getting weak and you can't handle it, because you are going to lose friends when you stand up. You are going to lose neighbors, but you're going to gain about 20 or 30 supporters when you do that. So I want everybody out there to stay strong, and I support you. And if I can support you, you certainly can support yourself.
And I'll just, say, wow, awesome. You go, girl, Samantha. Thank you for leading the charge. And I do want to underscore that we do have the power. The 1% really is the 1%. And then maybe there's a 10 or 15% that get behind them thinking they too can be the 1%. But at the end of the day, it's most people who are getting the short end of the stick right now. And if we do stand up with the courage of our convictions, then we are absolutely unstoppable together. So we can create an America and a world that works for all of us. Let's make it happen, and let's get this amazing woman elected. Let's do it. That's when things are really going to change. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being with us tonight. Big shout out to Mel Figueroa for doing the work, the tech work here in the back room. Back at you, Mel. And same to all of you. Keep the peace, hold the fort, and we'll see you here next week. Thanks so much. Take care.